Hey folks, before the episode starts, I want to let you know that my voice is going to be a little bit weak for this one. Just a couple of days ago, I attracted, I don't know, like some kind of virus in my throat, and it's been affecting my throat for a while, and as you can imagine, it's also affected my ability to speak. I don't know how much longer it's gonna be around. I'm hoping that with the right medicine and rest that it'll go away soon and I'll be back to my more energetic self. On a side note, I've recently heard about someone named Dore Art Dreams Aspie, who's currently dealing with a hard situation. Their family is being evicted from their home, and their mother is trying to get an RV to move to a trailer park so they'll have some place to live when they lose the house. The goal that they have in mind isn't too much, it's just around $2,000, but they only have a couple of days before they're evicted from their home. So this is something that needs to be taken care of as soon as possible. I'll leave a link to the GoFundMe in the description, so if you can, just check it out and see if you can donate. And if you can't donate, spread it around as much as you can. Any kind of exposure would really help out her family, and she would definitely be thankful for your support. Remember, link in the description, donate if you can, and spread the word. She would really, really appreciate it. Check it out, and then you can come back for the review.
I thought you said your brother was sweet. All the tough guy stuff is just an act. He's a big marshmallow.
That's nothing. When I'm in charge, the first thing I'll do is get revenge on those puny ponies. They'll regret they ever crossed Garble. We'll take whatever we want from Equestria and burn the rest.
You sure about that? I find myself having mixed feelings on Sweet and Smoky. On one hand, it's not a bad episode, and it's not a bad idea for an episode. But on the other hand, a lot of its quality ends up being really downplayed. And it brings up some really concerning implications considering a particular character reveal. So what happens this time? One day at the school, Smolder asks Twilight if she can return to the Dragonlance to cheer up her brother. She agrees, but only if Fluttershy and Spike go with as part of a kindness field trip. But when they get there, they're confronted with two major problems. The first being that the dragon eggs haven't been hatching and they need to help Ember figure out why. Second, it turns out that Smolder's brother is Garble, which is one of the stupidest plot twists that I've ever seen in this show. But I'll get to that later. There's a number of interesting qualities to the episode that manage to keep you interested in spite of its other issues. The most notable being Fluttershy interacting with the Dragonlance. It's an interesting concept for the show to try out, and they give her something to do so she's not just doing nothing in the background. She interacts with both conflicts and acts as a bridge between them, helping Ember by giving her advice for hatching the eggs, as well as dealing with Garble's issues and expressing himself more openly, which helps to settle some of the pacing issues in the middle. It's also such a great trip down memory lane seeing her assert herself to dragons again. The Season 1 vibes really start to kick in as she asserts herself towards the dragon bullies and challenges Garble's attitude towards Spike. Her assertiveness in this episode is just so satisfying to watch. She first built up the courage to talk down a fully grown dragon in Season 1, so seeing her talk down a puny teenage dragon in the final season really shows just how she's come full circle. What makes her assertive attitude so much fun in this episode is that it really emphasizes how her character development has been able to fully stick. It's really admirable how she's been handled since halfway through Season 4, coming a really long way since her one-note portrayals in the early days. Plus, it does make sense that she'd want to visit the Dragonlance for the hatching season since she's shown to be curious and fairly familiar with baby dragons. And with the motivation of seeing newborn babies combined with the growth of her bravery, it really makes sense for her to push herself out of her comfort zone. Aside from that, she's also been around dragons a lot more at this point. She's interacted with Ember a few times and helped to educate Smolder, so it's a pretty safe bet that she's grown out of her fear of dragons through befriending them. She also gets some really good banter with Ember. There's actually some pretty good chemistry between these two considering they have personality traits that are both similar and parallel to each other. They also have this pretty sneaky way of sneaking an adult joke into the episode with Fluttershy asking how Ember could produce so much eggs. It's just subtle enough to get through while maintaining a lighthearted sense of humor. Plus, seeing Ember trying to be a mother while growing frustrated with the dragon hatching issue is actually quite funny. Whenever Fluttershy and Ember are on screen, I just really really adore this episode. They really do make for its best moments. While it doesn't get a lot of screen time, I do appreciate that the brother-sister dynamic between Spike and Smolder is being carried over from Season 8. The two have a really unique way of interacting considering they have another one of their own kind to work off of. And they act really chill around each other, like the time they spent together in Meltdown and Father Knows Beast actually means something to them. They communicate like a real brother and sister, which really seems to build a bit of a family dynamic between the two. Spike also gets some pretty good characterization in this one. They're not big grand moments like in other episodes, but for the situation he's in, trying to tolerate Garble's bad behavior, he still pulls it off pretty well. It's understandable that he's keeping himself from just lashing out at him due to their history, and he really wants to put forth an effort to help Smolder. Smolder and Fluttershy sticking up for Spike is also a really good highlight in the episode, showing how it wasn't just a bunch of Spike abuse since the other characters actually stick up for him and care about him. And the way Fluttershy points out Spike's inner strength and stating that there's nothing wrong with expressing herself is a real boss moment. It's just so cathartic to see Garble being eaten out and having his bad behavior actually being called out. I'd also have to say that the eggs not hatching makes for the more interesting half of the episode. It makes for a nice mystery, and we get said fun banter between Fluttershy and Ember, as well as some nice interaction between her and Spike. Although I will admit that Spike pointing out how the eggs are cold puts it into question. Fluttershy interacted with the eggs more than once, so why didn't she notice that they were cold? She ran an animal daycare and now runs an animal sanctuary, so shouldn't she know that baby eggs are supposed to be cold? Wouldn't she think to tell Ember that the eggs are cold? It's just something that I noticed that I thought should be addressed. So yeah, this episode actually has quite a lot of good stuff in it. But then there's the really big elephant in the room. Garble is Smolder's brother, which opens so many questions that are never answered, and it just makes absolutely no sense. For the last 7 seasons, he's had no positive traits about him at all. All he's ever really done is be a total bully to Spike and the other characters. He was practically made to be a bully character to get butt-monkeyed at the end of an episode. And not to mention, some of his actions go way beyond just being a juvenile delinquent. He threatened to destroy Equestria if he won the Gauntlet of Fire, he was going to smash unborn baby phoenixes for the fun of it, and he's constantly threatened Spike with violence and maiming, even death at one point. Oh, but since he was under peer pressure by his friends, his tough guy persona was all just an act, which makes his past transgressions completely understandable. Why didn't Spike bring any of this up? Did he never talk to Smolder about Garble at any point the whole time they knew each other? No stories about his experiences in the Dragonlands which would have brought Garble into question? And if Smolder is Garble's brother, where has she been this whole time? She's very suspiciously absent for all the times Garble is around, and he never acknowledges her existence. It's like the idea of them being siblings was just made up specifically for this episode. It just comes across as really out of left field, and it just makes no sense. Where did his more sensitive side even come from? When did he pick up this hobby of being a poet? Is this just a thing where he started to grow a sensitive side because Smolder showed him what she learned at pony school? Because that aspect of their relationship is never shown or acknowledged in the episode. And I'm sorry, I just don't buy the idea that Garble had this secret sensitive side all along. He has literally taken so many extreme actions against the characters. Someone who's just acting out a tough guy persona wouldn't be that hostile. He wasn't even under peer pressure in those episodes. It was all his own choice. It comes across as extremely redundant that we're supposed to see him as a victim of circumstance when he's literally threatened another country with war. Okay, I get they wanted to add some dimensions to his character to make him more than just a stereotypical bully. But why are they adding dimensions to his character now, in the final season? If you wanted this to make more sense, you should have done it earlier. The super nasty tough guy persona was always what they did with him before this episode. And aside from that, he's a big dumb meathead. So him having this secret artistic side makes even less sense in context. Why is he only now having this sensitive side he's trying to keep a secret? Being fearful of his friends making fun of him makes no sense since he obviously has the means to physically intimidate them. And in this episode, all he does is give weak excuses when they tease him. You can't just take a character who was like this for 7 seasons and then just have him do a turnaround in 22 minutes. There's just too many unfortunate implications regarding his background. Like, what would Smolder think if he knew that Garble was going to destroy everyone? Or all the times he threatened Spike? Even for most of this episode, he's just an insufferable bully. They make a comment about how he was only doing it when Smolder wasn't looking, which makes her look really oblivious since it was happening right in front of her. And absolutely all of this is completely forgotten because it was all an act due to peer pressure. Act or not, it's not okay to be a bully and it shouldn't be forgiven this easily. They try to give him this moral about being who you are and not care what others think if you're not hurting anyone, to enjoy your passions without fear of others seeing it as uncool, which isn't a bad moral, but they give it to a character with such a messed up background and a change in personality that feels so forced and unbelievable. Even the ending feels really rushed as Garble suddenly gets dubbed a hero in spite of his past endeavors and all the other dragons suddenly want to be a poet like him too. The ending would have been better if the episode didn't drag out Garble being a bully so much. Like, show more scenes of him expressing weakness, being hesitant to interact with Spike but not necessarily treating him badly. Then when they're trying to hatch the eggs, Spike acts all silly to make them laugh and warm up the eggs. Then Garble sees Spike not being afraid to express himself and feels like if Spike can do it then he can too. And they work together as a team, acting all silly and goofy to make the other dragons hatch the eggs. And at that moment, Garble comes to accept himself and finally understands what Spike has been talking about this whole time. Have a moment in the episode with Spike and Garble actually bonding and have Garble learn something from Spike. That would have made for a much better ending. So yeah, this episode feels really half and half. The story is simple enough to follow and several character interactions are pretty fun to watch, but it's just making the whole episode about Garble doing this huge out-of-nowhere turnaround when there's likely gonna be no more appearances from him with how little episodes are left really drags it down. I will say though that Fluttershy playing a huge part in the episode really helps to redeem it. I mean it, she single-handedly saved this episode. Without her, it would have just been another 20-minute sloth of Garble being a dick to Spike again. I guess Sweet and Smoky is one of those episodes that I would consider okay. It does have its studs, but it's not nearly as bad as some other episodes, so it's a passable trade. So until next time, take care of yourselves and stay awesome. This is Map, signing out.